All right, I've started recording and I'm going to share my screen. It should bring me to Maya. Let me just go ahead and make sure that this gets expanded. Okay. So, bring the grid back. Before we get started, were there any immediate questions that anybody had about the interface? And you can type it in. You can use your microphone if you need to. None? Okay. Everybody's an expert. Let's get started. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be plenty of questions. It's perfectly okay. Allison, I might not have. It just depends on. I didn't because that was the. No, that wasn't yours. That was another Allison's. Did yours not make it in? Let me see here. I see it. Let me make sure I got it. Hang tight a little bit. I thought I had it. I do have it. Just jump right over you. Lame. Let's go ahead and. There's a lot of you in this class. Oh yeah. And a lot like the Akira motorcycle, it's like when you have something that is, designed around this assemblage of parts, it lends itself to this assignment a little bit more. Take a look at this. Yeah. I'd probably say just, try to get a hold of all this stuff, even if we start categorizing it by, type of thing. Sometimes it's a matter of naming it. Sometimes it's a matter of, just organizing it. Advice on how to make the pipe that attaches to the motor. This? Any of this stuff that's going to follow a specific type of path, that gets into the creation of forms using curves. And if you'll notice that your first menu is a bunch of curve tools as well as a bunch of surface options. These are what are called Nurbs. It's a wonderful acronym, non-uniform rational B-splines. It just is interpolated surfaces. They're not used a lot in games. The curves are, but in terms of creating it, it's the idea of like creating a path. I'm not going to go through this whole process of it in terms of this specific curve of like creating some type of a path like this, and then either creating some type of a cross section or using a polygon like a cube or a cylinder in this case to like that. And let's see, rotate it like that. And one of the problems with this is I need to make this one big n-gon for the moment. So that's the face that I can put along it. There's a lot of setup to this, unfortunately, and it's not something that I usually show people until we get into this stuff, but you asked, so select the face, shift select the curve. extrude the face, and then start to add divisions. And that's how you can get some of that stuff in polygonal form. There's ways that you can get these interpolated surfaces to be created, and then you can convert them to polygons. That's a bit cleaner, and it gives you a little bit more. It's not as clunky as this process is, to be honest. But I can work with you guys on stuff like that as we move in. Can we color these primitives? Color them in terms of applying different materials to them. Objects get colored by the application of different materials. Yes, you may. Everything comes in this default gray. That's the default material. And if you right click on any object, you can go right click and hold. You can assign a new material to it. And for this, it just depends on the surface properties that you're using. For this semester, pretty much all we'll be using are the blend and the Lambert. There might be a couple more that we're going to use. Lambert is essentially a matte shader. The blend can be kind of used for lots of different things, shinier things. I'll just create another Lambert one, and like all things, this is the attribute editor. Like all things, you want to name it. And I'll be working with you guys this a little bit later in the course, but I always name things with a capital M, and then rubber tire or something like that, just to identify it. But the color channel can give you the setup to that. So that's how you would, if you wanted to assign that. I prefer at this point that you don't bother with that too much, because it can start to distract from concentrating on the model. And it's a different kind of rabbit hole that you can go down. And I'd really like you to focus on the model and modeling tools and things like that. The zipped folder that I sent you guys, you can download that. You can download that from here, and you can save that in your source images folder of your project, and then you can unzip it. There's going to be a folder that contains some tables. So hopefully everybody got that. But overall, Allison, this looks really good. You're using some of the tools that I, talked about avoided using, but it's like, I think the results, given what you were working with, look pretty good. Where is the folder? I attached it in the chat box. Yes. All right. So let's see here. Let me open this up. And oh, that's not it. So in this folder, it's in the source images, table exercise. I've got this M2 table reference folder. I might have one more folder level. Just a few tables. We can take a look at these really fast. Sometimes these don't open while I have Zoom open the first time, and they open up for me. So if I was building this, I just want to talk about sort of, the analysis of something as simple as a table. If you were a furniture maker and you were making this, you certainly wouldn't carve this out of a single block of wood, because that would be, unless you were, trying to challenge yourself to hollow something out, or, you wanted to sculpt it from marble, single piece of marble. Furniture, like most of the things that you make, like the vehicles that you created, are assemblages. They're, cut pieces of wood that are staged together, duplicated, and things like that. And starting with something like a table is always a good place to, introduce some simple modeling tools, but it's also a good place to sort of analyze how forms can get constructed. There will be times, this is the table that I'm going to work on for this particular exercise. So if you want to follow along, you may. We've got the tabletop, we've got the legs, and the legs have this flared out form, and then they've got this little bit of a beaded form with this inset here, another bead. And we've got the feet, and we've got a rung that goes there. So taking a look at these things and building them, or thinking about how we're going to build it, is usually the best way to start something. Now you know how to make primitives, so we can build all of these, we can block out a lot of these forms, but adding topology into these forms and then manipulating it can be done in a variety of ways. And some of these tools that I'm going to introduce and go through will, I think help that process along. So the first things first, I want to get an image plane created in my perspective window so I can have a little bit of a reference of this. Now I think in the case of earlier with the Sungjae's Titanic, Ryan was using image planes in orthographic views to help construct it. I'm going to use an image plane in the perspective view just as a general reference. It's usually just kind of like a postage or a postage stamp or a postcard kind of little icon that I can put up here. So to create an image plane in any view, any of your camera views, but I'm going to put it in the perspective view. It's this fifth icon in, which is image plane. It's in your camera menu icons here. So I'm going to click on this, and if your project is set, it should take you to, sometimes it takes you to the images folder. I usually store this stuff in the source images folder. And that's why I ask you guys to put it there. So I'm going to go to that folder where the images are, and I'm going to open that up. Typically, so what this is doing is it's creating this kind of like temporary plane object, and it's attaching it to the camera. And when it does that, it fills the entire camera space, which is kind of like, okay, that's crazy. I can't really use this. But you'll notice I'm tumbling my camera, and it's kind of stationary. It's attached to the camera, so it's fixed to it. So it's not going to sort of be a poster out there or something like that that's going to rotate around. But that's fine. That's exactly what I want, because I want to be able to manipulate my camera and have an image that this stays flat parallel to what is called the picture plane here. We need to manipulate this, so let's go ahead and kind of manipulate this so it fits what we need, to be an image in the corner. So let's see, we have to change the size of it. So I'm going to go ahead and change the size in X and Y, and I'm just going to select those channels and move them along, and hold Control and middle mouse click and just scale it down. I don't want to do one channel at a time, because then it's going to, scale unevenly. And then I'm going to go to the offset X, hold Control and just move it over there. Offset Y, just move it over there. And now I've got it over in the corner. These can be manipulated in a variety of ways. You can always go into the attribute editor and maybe be able to adjust things in inputs in this. I find this incredibly cumbersome. The fastest, most interactive way that I usually adjust things is by using these channels, middle mouse control. So now you've got something that's set up that's in the corner that you can just have as a visual reference. Could you have these open in a second monitor if you had a second monitor? Yeah, you can always do that. You could have them in some type of application that constructs like image reference boards and things like that as well. For this demonstration, just so that everything is sort of included, I'll do that. And I do that in a lot of the video supplements that we use. So building a table. Well, we know how to make the tabletop. That's pretty straightforward, right? Cube. Going to draw it out. Eyeball it. And you can eyeball the proportions for this demo. I'm not really asking for any. Most of the things that we build, eyeballing the proportions is going to be fine. In the later advanced classes, we get into using specific measurements and things like that. Building this out. So even as I build this out, I want to start to talk about kind of the difference between two different types of mesh that you're going to be working with. One is called intersecting mesh, and you've been doing that with your Module 1 assignment. The other one is called watertight mesh. And watertight mesh is when you start applying these tools to these modeling tools to objects, and you start extracting and pushing in and deleting and recreating topology, you know, topology being the structure of mesh, out of a single object. So, and this is what it looks like if you were going to create this with watertight mesh. You're going to go into the subdivisions of the width, and let's go into the width. Say you create something like that, the subdivisions in the depth, and again, middle mouse clicking, and you sort of get this thing to a point that you're like, well, let me see if I can create something where I can start to extrude out some forms here. And you go into, you right click and select faces, you hold shift and you grab these. I'm going to explain all of these in just a second. I just want to take you through this process. And then you start extracting things out like this. And then, you know, you do it again. And then you start doing stuff like this.
Could you show us how to move that image into the corner again?
Yeah, hang on a second. But this is pretty much how I don't want you to model something like this. Because while it's, you know, I call it watertight mesh, and the term for it is watertight mesh because if you filled this thing up with water, nothing would spill out. There are no holes, there are no openings or anything like that. Think like a furniture maker. A furniture maker wouldn't make it this way. So why should you make it this way? It's not, you know, divide and conquer your parts. And that's where the analysis comes in. And that's kind of where a little bit of the reasoning behind the Module 1 assignment comes in. I'm going to tap Z and sort of get out of all of the stuff that I had created before. Jason, you had talked about the manipulation of this into the corner. Well, make sure it's selected. You'll get a yellow outline around it in the channel box layer editor. That's the tab that you want to be in for that image plane. You're going to be changing the size of it with the size X and the size Y. And you're going to be moving it with the offset X and the offset Y. So anytime you select a channel and you middle mouse click in your viewport, and you, especially if you hold control, you'll get smaller increments. If you hold control, you can. And by the way, all of these can be animated. So you can have all of your image reference just looping around if you wanted to drive yourself crazy. So creating your tabletop, first things first. Not a whole lot to it. I am going to start to get into later when you are, you know, creating detail within this. But the thing I would move on to next would be, you know, to start to create one of these legs. And another cube. Just go ahead and create that. And you can drag these things out freeform and then start to set parameters for them to kind of help initialize them, which is really what I do. I kind of drag it out as an estimation of what I'm doing. You know, I don't even have it staged where it needs to be right now. I just kind of drag the form out so I can look at it. And then I go, okay, well, this is a square form probably. And so that means the Z-axis and the X-axis are going to be identical. And if I'm just eyeballing this, you know, I could go in and scale it, but scale is a transform, and I don't really want to mess with that right now. I just want to work in the initialization of it. So if the width is say 2.5, I mean, and your dimensions can be different. The depth is going to be 2.5, and the rest we can adjust as we're modeling it or something like that. If I want to add some other types of information to this, in terms of divisions, that's going to be subdivisions along the height, and that I can add like 4. So I get 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe that can help represent at least this large form right here. And this was something that I talked about in the module 1 in terms of giving you guys the latitude to manipulate components. Right-clicking, selecting a face, R to scale, and then grabbing something like this. This is going to be a tool you use a lot when you're scaling things that where you've got two axes that have the same dimension to them, and especially concentric things. You can start to scale this in, kind of start at the top here and say like, well, it starts narrow like this, but then I can right click and select edges. And if you select one edge, you know, that's the beginning of something, but I want to select all of these edges that go around it. Well, the good news is this is what's called an edge loop. And an edge loop is defined by a four-sided face on either side. And the great thing about this, in terms of cylinders or any type of tubular form or anything, if you double click on it, it'll select the whole thing. This is something you're going to be doing a lot, double clicking on edge loops and manipulating them. They go, so as long as there's a quad on either side, and in some cases a triangle with certain things, but so if I double click on that, notice where it stops. It stops because there's only three. It changes the topology changes direction. So it'll give it to you as long as it's, moving in that sort of contiguous direction. So with this, we can scale these. And let me move this off so we have the image reference here. Yeah, you can kind of go to that one, scale it out.
So that's a double click on the edge?
Yes, it is. Notice that you won't be able to do it here because even though there are four edges around there, it's not an equal four-sided face on either side. Like that's an edge loop in that case right there. It's going to stop right there when it gets to the corner. And I'm just blocking this right now. It's going to look a bit chunky. I'm not going to have the elegance that our photo reference is going to have. You can right click on that face and maybe scale that down just to get that to the maybe towards the original size of that.
Can you also do the like you did with the edge loop? Can you do that with the faces as well? Like do it around?
You can, but it sometimes is problematic on something that's really short like this. Like I can select it.
Okay.
Let me do it vertically. It's better to show vertically because like I can select that. I can go down to that end, hold shift and double click. You'll get and that is called a face loop.
Gotcha.
So ways to select components, that's a really fast way to select things. And usually if I go to a vertex and I go down to here and hold shift and double click, as long as they're in a line and the geometry is pretty regular, it's a nice way to select things quickly. And then you can manipulate it the way you want to. So in terms of creating this bottom section of here, which is just this section right in here, I'm going to use our first favorite fundamental tool of creating more geometry. Let me bring this down a little bit. And that is, and I'm going to turn the wireframe on shaded display so we can see the wireframe. As a matter of fact, I'll move this up so we can see it a little bit better and select a face. And that is the Extrude tool. Now, I've been doing a little modeling and selecting some tools just to help demonstrate it, but I want to sort of take you through the mechanics of this. Anytime that I select a modeling tool, at least when I'm working, I hold shift and I right mouse click. And I'm holding, and then I drag to the tool that I need. This is a kind of a, it's a bit of a, while the shift key isn't always a common tool to use, right clicking and holding usually is a common kind of convention in a lot of interfaces to get menu options. Now, where is that tool up in here? Edit Mesh, Extrude. You'll notice it has a hotkey, Control E. That's the longhand. I usually call these menus the longhand version of it. We're going to use that tool a lot, so maybe I go to my GAM105 tool shelf and I go to Edit Mesh, Extrude, and Shift Control Select, and you'll see that it drops a little icon down there. So now, before I go ahead and execute this tool and start to talk about it a lot, I want to just take you through something really fast. If I select an edge and shift and right click, the menu changes. It's all edge tools. If I select the vertex and I shift and right click, the menu's changed. It's all vertex tools. The reason I use this menu is the same reason that a painter uses a palette and holds it close to where the painting is. I don't like moving around the interface a lot if I don't have to. Modeling is something that it's confusing enough when you're having to like find tools somewhere. It's like, oh, let me go up in this menu and reach for this and find this. It's like all of the tools you need are in the shift right click menu to model. You just have to make sure you're on the appropriate component that you want to select. The more familiar you get with these tools, the more you'll recognize like, oh, I know what the main face tools I need are. I know what the main segment tools or edge tools that I need, or vertex tools. And as you find them, you can, add them to your tool shelf to help you get familiar with them, but you can also find them in here. So, and now does everybody work this way? No, this is how I work. But that's my gives you and enables you the ability to work whatever way you want to work. I prefer this way, and I teach this way to people who are, hopefully going on to do more with 3D artwork, or if you're just doing some of the foundational stuff for block mesh and design, or anything. If you're doing coding, but you need some simple block mesh in your environments, save yourself the time. Think about every time you got to reach for a menu, how many thousands of times you're going to do that, as opposed to just working right down the middle. In 20 years, you'll thank me. It'll get some time back there. So let's extrude this face out. So I'm not going to touch anything, but you'll notice a lot of stuff happens when I just execute that extrude command. One of the things is we get a menu that is sort of this floating menu. What this is a shorthand of some of the, basically, the most important attributes within the extrude tool that you're ever going to use. And you can type these in. You can drag these things. You have an offset. You have thickness. You can add divisions, that type of thing. And if I type Z, it undoes it. We have the option to keep faces together, off or on, and I'll undo that out until it goes away. That's something as simple as, would I want to extrude all of this together, or would I want to extrude the faces separately? In which case I've got a bit of a geometric calamity on my hands here. But with something like a cylinder, if you're trying to create turning that off, you can see the benefits of doing something like that. In some cases, you'll want to do that. In some other cases, you want to keep them together. Most of the time, I'm keeping the faces together, but not all the time. So let me go back to that. Extrude that face out. You'll notice that the gizmo that we have changes, and we've also got this little, what's considered a radio button. It has a couple different names. I usually call it a radio button. All of this is the gizmo that controls the axis in which you move it, the axis in which it scales, if it's X, Y, or Z, and that has a lot of the same things that your other gizmos do when you're transforming things. And then it's got a ring around it. You can click on that ring and it engages the rotation of it. Something that, I'll undo that, redo it again. Something else that you'll notice with this button is if you click it, it changes the orientation of the gizmo. What it's changing is whether you're moving it local to respectful to itself, or if you're moving it respective to the 3D world. A lot of times that's called locally or globally. It's not really that, you know, it's not really that visible in something like this. But what if I have something like this? This isn't aligned to the 3D world in any way. It's at an angle. But if I wanted to extrude it, it's going to go out locally. If I change this, it's going to go globally. You're going to use that in certain instances a great deal, because sometimes if you think about, you know, dome things, spherical things, if you want to inflate it out, you don't want to move anything respective to the global XYZ. You want to move it respective to itself. And that's again, this is a fundamental concept that every 3D application basically has. So let's go ahead and execute this down the y-axis. I'm going to just sort of create what would be the mass of that form. And then I'm going to add some divisions in my little menu here. And I'm just going to add 3 like that. I'm then going to go into edges, double click those. Got the whole edge loop, shift, double click that one. R to scale. And then I'm just going to scale them so that the thickness is somewhat accurate to my reference. And then holding shift, you can go around it and select all those faces. Shift and right click, extrude those. And the blue handle is its local translate Z. That's usually going to be a handle that you use to bring that out. Then I can use that and see what's going on. Because it's set locally, it's scaling, transforming everything locally. So I'm not just pulling it outwards, but if I want to scale it, it's not scaling everything together. Like if I did that, it would, you know, it would collapse in on itself like that. It's scaling it per component. So something to pay attention to. And as you're using this extrude tool, I invite you to, you know, really just experiment with it, play with it, see what the results that you come up with show. And we got ourselves the beginnings of a table leg here. So one of the things I wanted to do next is I wanted to add more topology in here. And there's a couple different ways that I can do it. Really what I want to add are more edge loops in here because I need more topology. I'll always say this, topology is the structure of mesh. You make it and you move it. You just don't add it in there for, you know, just any reason. You usually are adding it in and then you're manipulating it to help create contours, to help your geometry sort of have, you know, more elegant forms to it, or at least a more sophisticated form. So the ways to do that are to access through segments. So the extrude tool actually works. You can extrude edges. You can even extrude a vertex. But goodness gracious, look at the results. Sometimes I will extrude edges if I'm dealing with planes or if I'm dealing with hollowed out cylinders and things like that. If this face was gone and I wanted to extrude this form upward, I would extrude the edge. But most of the time when you're extruding things, you're extruding faces. So let's go ahead and insert more geometry in here. Now that's going to be an edge tool. And the simplest way to do it is to shift, right click, shift and right click, shift and left click is something That might be a mouse setting that you have set up. Allison, are you using a Mac or a PC? Sorry, I'm just answering a question in the chat box here. Allison. It's a little... So shift and left click shouldn't really be doing it unless your mouse is configured for a lefty. Shift and right click should get you the menu that you need for your modeling tools if you have a component selected. If left click is working, I would check your mouse configuration. Set the faces. Well, left mouse click will work when you select the face, but if you're looking to model to get the modeling menu, that's shift and right click. Shift and clicking faces is going to add to a collection of faces. Control is going to delete from the collection. And also, if you select the face and you shift and select it and then select it again, which that's just with shift, it toggles that selection. Oh, in that case, I accidentally double clicked and it got everything. So there's a difference between, say, selecting and shift selecting, because that enables you to sort of toggle those. Control shift, just to make things more confusing, is a straight accumulation. Doesn't matter if it won't toggle anything. That's just helps you accumulate faces like that. So adding more topology to this, shift and right click. The tool that you're looking for is the Insert Edge Loop tool. And I'm just going to execute this without opening up any tool options or anything like that. Just going to let go, and you get this little arrow, and it says click drag on edges. And if you click drag anywhere, actually I should have reset the tool. Sorry, let me go in there and do this. I'm going to reset the tool and then go back into here, because you should have it in its default state. Really what you want to do is be able to left click and hold and insert extra edge loops in there. I had it set up so it creates like equidistant multiple edge loops. And to do that, you can go into the tool. Oh, and this is something else that is good to remind people about, is if you're engaged in a tool like the Insert Edge Loop tool, you'll notice that when I let go, you're still engaged in the tool. If you want to disengage from that tool, just type in any of the transform hotkeys, W, E, or R, and it'll take you back to that. There are some tools that, like the multi-cut tool, which I'll show you in a second, is going to do that. And you need to sort of like disengage from the tool. Let me undo those insert edge loops, because I'm going to show you a different way to do this too. And you'll notice that the insertions are coming at perpendiculars to whatever edge I'm selecting. So that's the way it works. Another way to do it, which is a more recent development with Maya, maybe it's a few years old, but it's a more versatile tool, is over here. It's called the multi-cut tool. And if you'll notice, the multi-cut tool is available whether you're selecting a face, it's in the same place, a vertex, same place. Even if we go into object mode and shift and right click, the multi-cut tool is right in there. So it's in the same place for everything. You can use it no matter what you have selected. And they did that on purpose because they want you to use, it's more like an arbitrary cutting tool that you can use. Well, I'll keep it on edges. Go into it. This has, this kind of like X-Acto knife type of look to it. You can kind of mouse over, and you'll see that it's got a little bit of like a magnetism to it as it goes around vertices. But you can start anywhere on this object and start to cut any type of topology into it. You don't want to, right clicking will engage it. You really don't want to do that without sort of setting up, because now I'm creating, what are called n-gons. But to insert an edge loop with the multi-cut tool, hold Control and perpendicular to whatever surface you're going, and you can pop it in. And if you hold shift, it actually snaps it in 10% increments. So you can actually go midway if you want to and just pop something in like that.
So do you have to hold control and shift at the same time?
Control and shift will give you the 10% control.
Gotcha. Okay.
Control inserts the edge, inserts the edge loop.
Okay.
A little bit more freeform. So I can double click these edge loops and I can go ahead and start to scale these with these tools. You know, if I want to create something that's a little bit wider, kind of take a look at the contour of it. You know, and that's gonna suit me for what I'm doing for this. At this point, I'm kind of just creating topology outside of, you know, where it might be staged. So I'm going to go into object mode, which you can go to by tapping F8 on your keyboard, or you can just right click and go into object mode. And I'm going to start moving this in space. And to do this, I always recommend going into the orthographic views. I'll use my grid to, you know, just kind of eyeball this. Again, I'm not going to be too hung up on the overall placement of it. If I need to bring this down, which it looks like I need to, I can just right click and maybe start to move some of this. Whoop, don't want to move that like that. Let me go into Wireframe and see what I got here. This is a good opportunity to explain pivot points to you guys. You'll notice that when you've tried to move things around, I think I talked about this a little bit in the first class, with moving things around, the pivot is usually at the middle of wherever you create something. And I talked about the idea of using the modify center pivot tool to center the pivot out into whatever the mesh is that you model. But you can also move this pivot at any time. You can manipulate it wherever you want to. In an object mode, you can manipulate it to rotate, scale, or move the object in any way. But if you right click and hold and select, say, these vertices, you can also manipulate the pivot point of that collection. And notice that the pivot, when I select things, goes to the midpoint of whatever I have selected. And I'm selecting through it with the marquee, right? This is where when you're building something, don't do it in here. You know, you're hurting yourself. Like, you have orthographic views to sort of constrain your axes. Do it in a view that's going to be more useful. But what if I wanted to scale all of these, but I wanted to scale it from down here? Well, hold D as in dog, and you'll get this interactive mode for your, if you tap it, it'll go into the interactive mode. You got to tap it again to exit it. But if you just click D and hold it, you can grab that Y-axis and you can move it down to wherever you want. And now I can scale it down like that. The thing about these pivots when it comes to component selections, they're sort of like a one-stop deal. As soon as you exit this and you start to select something else, you lose it. Can I make wireframe for only certain objects? Yes, you can. You can set the shading of things on a per object basis. It's not done in here though. Usually the shading hotkeys that I use that are in here, you can even make things X-ray, like transparent. To set them on a per object basis, you have to go into the attribute editor to do that. Which is a little bit of a drag, but hey, that's life. Control A is the attribute editor. It should be active for everybody over in here. Before I explain that, let me explain something else to you guys. Notice that every modeling command that you've executed on this thing has been stored. This is your construction history. And this is the thing that as you're working on stuff, you want to delete it. So I tend to do this process like this. I will save this out. So I'll save my scene out. You know, I got to go to my, let me back out. I've got all your coursework in here. Here's module 2. I would call this, you know, I'll just call this GAM105 into table demo. You can call it whatever you want. But then I'll put like the suffix of like work 001 on it or something like that. Now these files have nothing to do with what you'll submit to me in terms of the submission names, but you'll want to name something that has like some, it doesn't have to have the padding of 2 zeros and then a number. It can just be 01, 02, 03. I just tend to save a lot of working versions out just so I don't lose anything. So I save it out as a work version 001, get the educational warning and everything like that. And then I can delete this construction history. Let me go to my tool shelf because I'm going to want to save this. Edit, delete by type, history, Alt Shift and D. I'm going to hold Control Shift and click, and I'm going to add that tool to the tool shelf so I can just click on it. So in terms of individual objects being set as wireframe or anything like that, Control A is the attribute editor, but you can just click on it right here. And you see I've deleted all those nodes so that the history kind of compresses itself. Every object has a shape node, and I talked about that last week. You've got the transform node, moves it around in 3D space, rotates it, and things like that. That's this node right here, and that corresponds to this. The shape node in the attribute editor usually corresponds to anything that happens down in here, the modeling commands, the inputs, and things like that. The things that make, you know, that make it what it is. Under this mesh component display, I believe there's lots of display options that you can have in here. In terms of individual wireframe ones, I believe we're talking render stats. I don't usually do this in here. Sometimes I use custom tools and things like that, but let me make sure I'm not giving you guys bad information. Hang tight. It's like I knew it and then I lost it. Where did that go? Sorry. Having a little bit of a brain cramp here. Ah, drawing overrides. Sorry. You can turn, it's basically an override that you override the shading and it'll set individual things to it. It's not that elegant, to be honest. 3D Studio Max, which I used a lot when I was doing a lot of level construction at studios, it has a better shading interface than Maya does, but it doesn't have a better animation interface. So it's like, you know, a lot of different balancing acts here. But go into drawing overrides under object display. You got that. You might be able to find custom tools online that can do a lot of this stuff. I'll actually look around for those. I know a few people who they write custom scripted tools that you can make up here that give you the ability to put this on objects. But 4 is going to be wireframe, 5 on your keyboard is going to be shaded, and that corresponds to basically these buttons right up in here. The wireframe on shaded, I'll be using that a lot as I'm building stuff with you guys. Let me keep moving here. I'm probably just going to scale some of this down a little bit too. You'll notice that cameras can show up in orthographic views. If you want to, you can go to the show menu and you can just turn cameras off. You can pretty much turn any type of object off in any camera, and that works on a per camera basis. The image plane might show up in some of your You can see it shows up in other camera views. In the attribute editor here, it says that it's looking in all views. You can actually limit this to display it just looking through the camera that it was created in. And it'll just stay in the perspective view and it won't show up in any of these. It can be kind of distracting. The last thing I just wanted to do for the sake of my own satisfaction is select the base of this and go to scale. Let's bring the size of this down so it's a little bit more accurate. You'll notice I use multiple views a lot. It's easier for me to look at things from different points of view. Just, okay, limit my z-axis in here, limit the x-axis in here, and then kind of take a look at the form overall. And you can see my camera's popping around in there as I'm moving it. That's my perspective camera. Probably need to bring some of this down as well. I'll stop nitpicking in just a second. Hang on. Maybe those two. Anyway, lots of different adjustments that we can get into this. I'm going to move on to the base. F8, get into object mode. Go back into my poly modeling, just draw out a cube, kind of rough it out next to where it would be. I'm building this right down this x-axis, so I know that the z is going to be at 0, so I can put that at 0. I can move this like right here, I can move it under it. I'm going to go ahead and shift select all of these and just move them up a little bit. It's just over the grid. So let's see. This one we can zero out the z-axis so it's right in the middle there too. All right, divisions. This is going to be divisions that run down the z-axis, so that should be the depth. You can middle click, or you can just type it in. I'm going to probably add, let me see here, add about 6, maybe 3 on either side. Then we can just, either with faces or with segments, we can bring this down. Looks like I probably need a couple edge loops in there. So why don't I use the multi-cut tool, shift and right click with an edge, hold shift and control, and do about halfway in between all of those. I'll just pop those in. I can work, there's working with symmetry is something else that you can do, but since this is a simple enough form, I don't really need to bother. It looks like it's got a little bit of a slope to it. Could probably add a couple other edge loops in there. Let's go ahead and do that with the insert edge loop tool, but we'll use a feature of it. So insert edge loop tool would open up the options. You'll get the tool settings, and it defaults out like this. Just reset the tool that you can arbitrarily sort of insert an edge loop, you know, this way. But if you use this multiple edge loops, it'll have this use equal multiplier, so it'll put them in equally. And you can still put to one edge, but you can drop it in and it puts it right halfway in between. I'll undo those. You can make it 2, 3, or 4. Drops it in. So really quickly you can insert as much information as you need and it'll do it pretty, you know, equally. So I can set this to 1. It just puts it right in between. And then I can double click one of these, shift, double click the other one, scale it. Maybe put those edge loops right there because I wanted to maybe start the slope, but I didn't want to start it until I got right past that. So there's some other stuff going on around the feet. There's a little bit of like a cut and maybe another piece of wood that acts as a little bit of a foot underneath each side of that. Let me select this face and this face. Use R to scale these two in. I'm also going to extrude off of these. So shift and right click and extrude those. And then I'm going to scale that just like I did the bead right in here, just in the y-axis. And because it's set to that local kind of scaling, it just scales it down in a single axis. I would suggest that as you're doing these tools, using these tools, to think about, you know, sometimes you're going to want to scale things in multiple axes. Sometimes it's just one axis, but try to work, you know, a single axis at a time, as you know, if possible. With furniture, it's pretty easy. I'm not really going to get too much into the, you know, cutting into that extra piece of topology or adding it. There is something I want to talk about though with the extrude tool. Let me right click and go into object mode. Turn that wireframe off so we can take a look at that. You know, basics are all there. There's a few more things I'm going to talk about before we, you know, get everything sort of duplicated and moved over. There's an important thing with the extrude tool that I always try to stress this when I introduce this, is Maya has a mechanic of how the extrude tool works, and if you don't remember this or you don't have this in mind, you can get really messed up with the geometry that you create. You can add all this extra stuff. I'm going to right click on a face and extrude it. Shift and right click, extrude this, and just drag this out. You'll notice that what it does is it creates this menu, this floating menu with the attributes that help you offset it and set the thickness, which is, you know, pulling this out, keeping the faces together if it's multiple faces. I've talked about that. In the channel box, you'll have the node that gets created in your input, which gives you lots of different, you know, axis parameters that you can use. You can, you know, you can twist this thing if you want to. You can do all, you can taper it. You can do all kinds of things to this with the, especially if it's got divisions. I think you can start to twist it. It's not really letting me do it at this instance, but let me show you something. I'm gonna, so I hit Z and it went back to where it was, but you'll notice the extrude is still active in the channel box. So if I move this face, just tap W, there were 4 faces still there. They're accordioned up against that original face that I extruded. If you don't undo this to the point that that extrude is lost in your construction history, I'll hit Shift Z, which is a redo. You're going to have what are called faces with 0 geometry or 0 area or something like that, that are going to be inside of there. This is a very common beginner's mistake, and this is why, especially specifically from my end, this is why I bring it up, and it's important to talk about it. Like, that's bad geometry. That's bad modeling. Poor modeling is proper English. But so the best way to avoid it is to just make sure that that extrude input is not in there. If you lose track of that, which is very easy to do, so you manipulate it and you pull it out and you're like, oh, I didn't want to do that. I'll just go Z, Z. That's still active. This is still active. So we know that that's still, but sometimes what you'll do is you'll just deselect and then you'll go on to another face and you'll extrude that. Didn't get rid of any of this. Still extra geometry in there. So here's the sort of the back out so we're where we need to be. This is a little bit of like a safety net. If you're modeling and you feel like you're doing this or you keep doing this, go into the object's attributes, into that shape node where we were, you know, looking for the individual shading overrides and things like that. And under the mesh component display where I was originally looking, you can click on, and this is on a per object basis too. You should be able to click on display center. That's the face center. And if I deselect this, you'll notice, well, let me just type in Q so I get rid of, it's just a selection. I don't have a gizmo there. You'll notice that there are these little blue dots in there. That'll give you a face center. That should always lie at the center of a face, hence the term, right? If I right click and extrude this, look what happens. Face centers that run along edges. So if I undo that, and for some reason I accidentally, leave this, you should never have face centers that run along edges. That's a telltale sign that you've got some compressed faces in there. This may seem a little bit like, what? But when you're in the modeling, when you're into the flow of this, it's going to happen. It might happen a little bit, it might happen a lot, and getting those face centers accessed is going to be something that you might want to have as a safety net as you're building things. So let's see, we've talked about the extrude tool, we've talked about the insert edge loop tool, we've talked about the multi-cut tool. So 3 tools. Those are 3 tools that you're going to use a lot. Practically for every assignment that you do, the insertion of geometry and topology and some part of this. You'll notice that, you'll notice that this cube, in terms of getting the form to be interpreted, we've got a face here, we've got a face here. What are we missing? And anybody can chime in and say this. What makes it look like kind of faceted? Is there something that we're missing? If you were rendering this form, say like if you were making a drawing of it and trying to imply form. I'm sorry?
Like screws?
Well, I mean, no, that's more like a detail, and we really can't see anything. That's not a...
Would you have the edges rougher?
Well, the edges would be more visible, wouldn't they?
Right.
Like right now, all we see is a transition from one face to the next because there's only so much topology there. And this next tool, which is another fundamental tool that you use, is basically how you create that. And it's a good sort of lesson about how 3D topology gets created in the first place, and the elements of form that help convey something. If you select all these edges, you can shift and right click and you can bevel them. And the bevel, like the extrude, has its little floating menu that you can adjust, and you can set how tight that bevel is. I'm going to move in on this, Alt and right click. And you can also set segments. A single bevel will turn an edge into a face, except at these corner transitions, you'll get an extra piece of geometry here, a triangle. If you do 2 segments, which is what I do for a lot of bevels, it'll convert everything to quads there. So, and it's nice because you get a holding edge. You get an edge here and then an edge on either side. But what you also get that you didn't have before is a highlight, which should, it's an important lesson when it comes to how topology can work for you. If an edge isn't going to convey any sense of form in the display of things, faces convey form. They carry the shading of a surface. An edge just connects 2 faces together. So if you're trying to get those types of highlights out of things, you need to add the topology in those places. And when you're creating things like, hard surface objects, industrial objects like tables or, mechanical things, the bevel command, when you're trying to add this stuff, is usually one of those commands that you add later in the process. You don't create objects and start to add bevels as the first, thing that you do. You do it later in the process, because that way you can kind of keep your bevels under control and you can make these things uniform thicknesses. because the number is going to vary depending on the type of object that you have. So I'm going to leave this bevel on the tabletop in here. You know, I'll wait to add it to something like this or to something like this because I might want to save this out first. You know, this would be easy to recreate with just one tool, but I don't want to dive in and add a bunch of bevels to the stuff and then have some geometry that gets, you know, weird or errors or anything like that. I'd like to save it in this sort of unbeveled state. So I'll make sure I save this scene out as another working iteration, 002. And then you can work on this and save this as a 003. It's that idea of, you know, preserving these things in different states of development so that if you need to go back to something that's unbeveled or in a more primitive state, you can do it. I'm not going to go ahead and do it, but if you want to, you know, bevel some of these edges, you may. Deleting my history, can always edit, delete by type history, edit, delete by type history, Alt Shift and D. You're going to be doing this a lot to get rid of a lot of these. So having it up here, remembering Alt Shift and D, definitely something that you're going to want to do. Talked about duplicating things, moving something over from one side to the next with the wagon wheel earlier. Again, you'll notice the pivots there, the pivots there. What are the easiest ways to get this, you know, from one side to the next? Well, the easiest way is to get that pivot right there. You know, the most sort of simplistic way is to just Control D duplicate and just move it over, but that can be, you know, not as neat as what we need it to be. So what I would do is, if I need to move more than one thing over, I would select both of them, Control G group them, and look what happens to the pivot. The pivot on the group node goes to the global origin. So if I duplicate this group, and then I type in a -1 to the axis, it shoots the entire group over to the other side in the x-axis. That's sort of like the quickest, dirtiest way to do it without using the mirror tool. But the problem is you never want to have negative inputs in your transformations and your scales. That basically means they've been turned inside out. If you sent this into Unreal or Unity or something like that, that geometry would come flipped. It would come, you know, turned inside out because it's looking for these transformation inputs. So we want to use another tool, modify, freeze the transformations. It zeroes out the rotations and the movements. It changes the ones, it changes the scales all to 1. So now it's in a state that's sort of much more renderable, if that's a word. But you know, and my scale is probably a little bit on the narrow side, but we can go ahead and then create that center rung, which is just another cube that you can pull out. I'm going to grab all these channels and just type in 0 in my number pad, and then just move that up. You always want to make sure that you name things. You can name things in here, table underscore top, you know, table leg 01, table foot 01, and then you've got table leg 02, table foot 02, table RUNG or whatever you want to call that. And then if you want to save this out, (03), open the outliner up, can take all of these, group them together. Now let me bring them into there. just call it table. Sometimes when I'm grouping things together, I call things table, and then I put like I either call it this group, or I do a big capital GRP. So I just know that it's a big group that's going to have subgroups in it or something like that. We can name these subgroups, you know, left leg, right leg, that type of thing, or leg 1, leg 2. And then you can go ahead and save it out. So what do we talk about? We talk about constructing a table using primitives, the manipulation of them, the extrude tool, the insert edge loop tool, the multi-cut tool, the bevel tool. And I probably touched on a couple other tools along the way. Sometimes I call these things commands: modify, center the pivot, modify, freeze the transformations, edit, delete by type history. I show you these tools in this module because you're going to use these tools in every subsequent module in this class and most of the work that you do when you model. These are the core tools. There's plenty of other ones, but these are the ones that, in terms of inserting topology and manipulating stuff, definitely you're going to be using this. So your assignment, which is posted, which also has some start files that are attached to it, is that you're going to model a dresser. And with this, I've got a zipped folder of some dresser reference. I've also got a link to a YouTube playlist that has something I usually share with a lot of online students that'll give you a progression of how I do it. But, I mean, I've showed you all the tools that you're going to use to do it. You're just going to make another piece of furniture using similar tools. There might be some more things that get demonstrated in those videos, but you have that as some reference to help you along the way. And pretty simple stuff, to be honest, but it can be complicated in terms of the way that you think about it. The one thing I would say is, just try to avoid getting too hung up on watertight mesh. Trying to build too much out of a single object would be my biggest sort of suggestion. Think like a furniture maker. Don't think like a someone who's sculpting something out of a single piece of granite. There are times and places for that, and even when you're making furniture or like bookshelves, there's times when you can apply that, but it doesn't always apply to everything. There's some other tools that we're going to be using: offsetting edges. We might use some other tools like editing edge flow. I don't think I use that in there, but sometimes sliding edges. Pretty self-explanatory tools, to be honest. They just manipulate edges or average them out. But all the specs should be in there. And I know we're sort of cutting it close to the mark here, but are there any questions about this that you want to ask me? Can we choose any dresser to model? I would prefer that you use one of the ones provided. If you've got an image that you want to model, send the image to me and let me look at it, so I can give you the we're in early days here, and I don't want you to sort of like have this ambitious plan to do something and I go, ooh, maybe we want to back it off to something a little bit more basic or foundational. Should the two objects be placed on top of the dresser? Yes. If you make a wastebasket with some trash in it, that should go where the wastebasket goes, on top of the dresser, right? If you're shooting hoops or something.
Can you bevel curved edges too?
Bevel curve edges too. You can bevel the edge of any piece of geometry. What are we referring to here?
The fat legs, the table legs.
Oh, those things. Yeah. I mean, anything you can go ahead and bevel all that stuff. The only reason I didn't is just because I just wanted to remind everybody that it's good to save it out in this one state. I would bevel, if I did bevel these, I would bevel these vertical ones first and bring that fraction down, and then maybe bring that to that, because these would probably have a little bit of a different construction to them. and the bevel range might be a little bit different.
Okay, got it.
And you'll also notice it's actually a good question, because you'll also notice that at some points you get this faceting. This is basically, edges are what dictate how surfaces get interpolated as either soft or hard edge transitions. And sometimes you'll need to select these edges, double click on them, shift right and click, and go to soften, harden the edge, and soften it. You can also harden an edge. You can double click on the edge loop, soften, harden the edge. That's what those of you who were manipulating the geometry and you ran into these sort of like shading issues where it started to get black and kind of soft as it was going around this extreme turn, that's essentially what it is. The softness or hardness of an edge. I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but yeah, you can do that. I'm going to create a bit of a topic as well, and you can see the difference between, say, like that, not a lot there, and then that, where you actually get that highlight. You know, those are the elements of form that help create surface transitions and things like that. They give more information to the viewer. I'm going to create an exercise topic for this table. Anything that you have constructed, I would like to see it. I would like you to submit it. I will give you a file name that you can submit it, and I'll give you credit for creating it. I usually will do this in every class. If you follow along with me, I'll give you some credit for the exercises that you're doing, because I want to give you credit for all the work you do.
A couple quick questions. With the file name, is that for the actual save name or just when we upload it with the subject name and stuff like that?
I'll ended with a dog. It was like an exclamation.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's perfect. That's great. Get that dog registered in this class. When I send out an assignment, when I post it, I'll give you a naming convention that I want you to submit it as. It'll usually be like, you know, the number of the module with the name and then your last name. Whenever you're submitting anything to me, your last name is going to be perfect. It doesn't need to be initial, last name, or anything like that. I'll get to know each of you. It helps me sort of like roll through things last name wise, but I'll always specify a naming convention in the topic, whatever topic that I post for an exercise or an assignment. And like I said, it's very different from the work that you save in your files, your working files. That can be named, you know, as long as you need it to be to help describe whatever you need it to be.
And then the last question. I walked away when you did the bevel, and I got the bevel, but I was just curious about how you got like a square into the corner of the table.
That's
Mine just made a straight edge.
Okay, well, that's because, let me select all the edges of this. When you bevel an edge, if you can set the fraction, which is the distance, but if you set the segments to 2, at 1, it'll just give you, one segment that turns an edge into a face. If we do 2 segments, it'll give you, 2 segments this way, so we get a center edge and then a holding edge on either side, but it converts that corner into 3 quads. Do you have to do it this way? Well, not necessarily, but it helps give you enough information there to help, kind of create a transition there. And I would say, I can't stress that enough, save those bevels for last. You'll thank me later. It's one of those things where you don't want to do it too early in the process, because if you commit to something, then you might end up needing to model some geometry a certain way, and then you're like, oh, my bevels need to be changed or something like that.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Making tables. We'll be making all kinds of stuff this semester. But I hope this helps. I hope these demos that the supplemental stuff helps as well. This part of the lecture, I usually record all of it, to be honest, but I just did this part today. But this will be posted later once it gets processed, and you can have access to this if you need to go back through the exercise and do that. There was one of those students, I think it was Evan, had some issues with Maya being downloaded, but that's something that we can work out afterwards. So I'm going to stick around and help Evan with his particular issue, or as much as I can, because the installation of Maya, as you all know, is a process, and that process involves that verification and then waiting for the verification, and then, you know, hopefully it going through. Maya did this a couple semesters ago, especially with the onset of the pandemic, because they knew that so many people were installing it from home. But I also think it had to do with just the way that they're changing some of their licensing and their agreements with education, schools, institutions.
Yeah,
But
when I was doing it, it was sending the verification to my spam email, so or like the spam. So I had like 15 of them because I was like, "Where is it?"
yeah, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, wrong email. And that's based off of the account that you make, and then you know, we had conflicts with names that were in the verification that got sent off versus what got entered in the account, and you know, it's I can jump in there with somebody from Autodesk in their chat. I've had a lot of success with that, but you can do as well. You can do the same thing. Just their chat box. You usually have to wait a little bit in the queue, but you can, you know, chat with someone and hopefully they can straighten it out with you. If not, you can always just get back to me and I can use whatever clout I've got as the lead of 3D curriculum at this school. At the largest for-profit art college in the country, I can, like, you know, I can give them all these demands. But if there isn't anything else, you know, have a great week. You guys can all sign off. I'm going to stay on here and just at least work with Evan for a second, just to make sure that that process is started. And if anybody has any other pressing questions, they can sort of stick around. But other than that, I would say have a good week. Reach out if you have any questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
You guys are very welcome. Good work this week. Have a good week.
Bye.
All right, take care.
Hey, Patrick, I think I had a same problem, like installation problem. Just, you know, we talked about it like a few days ago, right?
Are you still using the trial?
Yeah, the problem is I sent an email to the Autodesk customer support, but I haven't received anything yet. It just sucks.
You know, I think let me I'll work with them on your particular case. Did you use your Academy email to create your account? Is that
I'm trying to be AFK, all right?
Evan,
Well, actually,
mute your mic for a second.
I did not. I actually used my personal email.
Okay.
That's probably the case, I think.
Yeah, because it's an Academy verification. They're probably looking for an Academy account. Did I suggest to you to remake a new account using your Academy email?
Actually, the thing is, I create another account with my another personal email. I did not use my like Academy email. Like, I don't know. That's probably the case. I can give a try. Maybe it will.
I think that might be what is creating the conflict. It also might have to do with something that you've got your given name and then the name that you're using in terms of like you know, Runzi versus whatever you might be you know, asking people to call you.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a differentiation between that and your verification information, as opposed to anything in your email address, I think it's mostly just that the Academy email isn't being used.
Oh.
It's one of those things where it's like, if I look up, because I think when I looked up your account in particular, they said that email wasn't being used. And I suppose if you reach out, have you talked to anybody yet from Autodesk?
Yeah, I did not give a call. I just sent an email to the customer support, but they haven't responded like any.
could you do me a favor and go to the Autodesk chat and log on and go into there and submit your problem to them and see if you can get it straightened out with them, maybe with your first email or your first Gmail account or whatever you did.
Yeah. I'll keep contacting them.
Because I had really good luck communicating with someone and getting through that process with them, and they were able to articulate what might be the specific error. With yours, I think what happened when I was trying to straighten it out with like a list of students who had issues is I was using your academy email, and they were saying like we can't find that. That is, and I think that's what the problem is I was giving them the wrong email account. And they were just,
so you said the chat. What you mean what chat you're talking about?
so basically, when you go to Autodesk's web page, if we go into, let's see, my account, here's my profile and everything like that. Let's scroll down, contact us. Contact support. Education and trial support. Software for students, teachers, and schools. Downloading software. You can sign into your account, and then you can, do some searches for the type of application, and you should be able to get to a chat box from there.
Sorry, just I do have a. May I occupy in like 2 more minutes? Sorry, I just have one last question because I'm using 12 version, but I had an issue, like I couldn't save the work. Like once I saved it and then I reopen it, all of my artwork just disappeared. Like
you saved your work and you tried to open it.
I reopened it, but it just disappeared, like for no reason, like at all.
The trial version shouldn't destroy your work.
I mean, just if you don't mind, I can show you my screen, but I'm probably just gonna take more time. I know you're gonna talk.
Let me let me work with Evan on this, and I can get back to you on this. If you want to, you can meet me in my office. Say, let's see, I can send you a link to actually, there's a link in the class site to my office. If you can jump into my office, say at about like what would that be, 12:45 Pacific time?
Okay, 12:45. Okay.
Yeah, I'll have my office up, and you can jump in there and we can sort of talk about this. You can share your screen. But yeah,
you mean the Zoom link, the Zoom chat?
Yeah, that would be the link that's in, if you go to the topics in the course.
Oh yeah, I see. I know where it.
Yeah, that would be my actual Zoom office.
Okay, I'll jump back in 12:45.
Yeah, go to that link, and I'll be there, and I'll meet with you, and you can share your screen, and we can walk through that. Okay.
12:45. Okay. Right.
Awesome. Thank you, Rinzi.
All right. Sorry.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah.
Evan. All right.
Hey, you have to suffer now.
Okay.
What seems to be the problem?
All right. So first, I'm not downloading on my laptop because my laptop is not capable for doing it. So we're downloading it on my. I'm at my friend's house. He is also attending the school, and I'm downloading it on his computer because it's really good.
Okay.
And so I'm on the Autodesk like website, and I'm on like Maya and stuff. I did the confirming my enrollment and stuff,
Mhm.
but I don't know where to download it. It just says to buy it.
Did you, so you created an account with your Academy email,
With this, yep.
and you've gone through the enrollment verification directions in terms of getting the information off
Yes,
of
I did.
the LMS, and so could you share your screen with me and show me where you're at?
I'm on a different computer from the one right here.
Oh, you're on a different computer from
Yeah,
the
I'm
one
on
where you're at.
I have 2 computers set up right now. I can actually try to get into the Zoom call on that one. And
Let me sort of see what we can, how I can sort of guesstimate what's going on here. In terms of being able to download a copy of it, once you get, once you get the Autodesk verification, did you get an email from Autodesk?
I was actually trying to log into. I think I did, and I'm pretty sure I confirmed it. So I'm going to try to log onto that right now. But I'm trying to sign up.
Because
Okay.
they should have been able to send you like a verification.
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can find it real fast.
It works really well. Sophia. I'll have you know, I used the hotspot for a full 3 months in a row because we didn't have Wi-Fi. It was flying.
Doesn't look Outlook right. Okay. Okay, it says I'm eligible for 1 year educational access to Autodesk products through the thingy. Get products? Question mark? Is that what I need to click?
Oh my God.
Maybe.
Are you logged in on that browser to your Autodesk account?
Yeah. Oh, I think I might have figured that out. But maybe. Wait. Okay, figured it out.
Is it taking you there?
Yeah. Okay, I hit install. I think
Okay.
I got it.
It can be a little weird.
Yeah.
It's not as simple as it used to be.
It was weird because so I would go to the Autodesk website and I would sign into my thing and I'd go to Maya and I click get product, but then it'd take me to like a purchase thing, but I'm still logged into my school account. But then I went to the same website through the email and then it said I could install it.
I think it's a work in progress for Autodesk as well.
Yeah.
And again, it's a little bit of this sort of unprecedented sort of situation that we're
Great.
dealing with, and they're trying to get everybody licensed in a certain way.
Yeah, I have a question about the first assignment though. So I wasn't able to even like start or do that. Will I still be able to do that?
Because you signed on late, right?
No, I was in the class, but I was never able to download it because my laptop wasn't capable, or
okay, that's
it doesn't
right.
require the specs. So.
Yeah, do it,
Okay.
and if you can get it to me, if you can get it to me by the beginning of the next module, that would be great.
Okay, I can try to do that.
You can submit it in the instructor's office topic. Just make sure that you follow the same submission guidelines in terms of the name, the file format, and everything like that. But yeah.
Okay, I'll try to do that out. Says select additional components for download. Oh, I need this.
But it sounds like you're on your way. I mean,
I think I got it figured out. So I'll be able to start working on those, hopefully. Because I won't actually be able to work on those unless I'm at my friend's house.
Mhm.
on his computer. So I will try to get over here often enough to try to do assignments.
Are you inside the Bay Area? Or are you away from there?
No, I live in Oregon.
Okay. Now it's just that there were like checkout systems that the school was offering to people who were local.
Yeah, I know.
But yeah, it's you know, minimum specs for computers is something that's just, it's gonna, unless you're running something like Teradici, which, you know, remote desktop sort of access, but that's usually as good as the bandwidth of your connection.
My laptop just barely runs Photoshop, so I'm glad it at least runs that.
If anything, it's a good opportunity to sort of start digging around something like a PC Part Finder and look at the profiles for laptops, or not laptops, but desktops to create for, you know, 3D development or games. They have lots of profiles out there. I highly recommend that everybody who wants to get into this industry at one point or another puts together their own computer.
I want to. I've been actually planning on it, but I'm not sure.
It's you know, it can be a bit of a nerve-wracking experience, but like, if you're going to do any freelance work on your own, or even if you're at a small studio and something messes up, it's always good to have a little bit of experience sort of navigating around the guts of a computer.
Yeah.
And troubleshooting it. It could be the best skill that you ever take away from this education, is just being able to fix problems.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
yeah, it sounds like you got the process started. But if anything happens, you know, you can reach out to me. Email.
I will definitely send you an email.
I'm on Discord too, and I'll be looking for that too.
All right, cool.
All right.
Well, thank you
I'm
for
gonna
staying
stop
after.
I'll be stopping the recording. And
All right. Well, you have a good day.
You too. Take care.